Brought to you by Habersham Medical Center, keeping you healthy with a doctor close to home. I am Hazel Courting alongside Dr. Maribel Miller. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Miller, you are a local pediatrician here in Habersham County.
Yes, I am the physician, the pediatrician for New Day Pediatrics in Clarksville, Georgia.
And I'm so glad you said that because I forgot the name of your practice. But it is New Day Pediatrics.
Yes, ma'am.
Here. And I asked you here today so that we could talk about some of the things that parents get concerned about with their little ones and even teenagers here during the summertime. Of course, July is UV protection month. So we want to talk about how we can protect our little ones against the sun and dehydration and different things like that. So tell us what you suggest as far as keeping little kids healthy.
Well, infants, the problem with infants is that their skin is way more sensitive than we are. And then they can become dehydrated faster than adults can.
Now, why is that? Just because they can't tell us, obviously, when they're thirsty and we don't pick up on that?
They can tell us that, the older children can, younger can't. But also, their volume of the volume of their body and their skin is different in ours, so they lose water more readily than adults would.
And of course, we think of especially infants, it goes in one orifice and out the other.
That can happen too.
Almost immediately. Well, that's what I think of when I think of, smaller children, especially under a year.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, so often when they're that age, we think it's so cute to put them on basically in next to nothing. We put them in these little sun suits, and we forget sometimes that we should be putting on sunscreen. What sunscreen do you recommend for these kids?
Well, for children that are 0 to 6 months, we usually just recommend just avoiding sun exposure.
Okay.
Try not to get them out in the sun as much. And if we do, then, have them well covered up. Very light clothing in the sense that the fabric can breathe, but long sleeve, something that covers the legs, a nice hat with a big old brim. And if you use sunscreen, you can use but a minimal amount, mostly minimal amount on the face to try to prevent that, prevent burns.
What would you say to these parents who, have these 3 and 4 and 5 month old babies who are off to the beach? They're sun worshipers, and the beach is where they go for vacation, and yet they have these infants. Do you suggest don't go, wait till the child is older, or like you said, long sleeves but lightweight clothing?
Well, it's hard to stop family vacations because they may have other children too. Personally, for my child, I wouldn't take her, but if you have to keep them in the shade, not keep them outside for prolonged periods of time, be in and out, so to make sure the heat doesn't get to them, and keep them covered, and apply the sunblock frequently.
Okay. Now, getting back to the dehydration, how often, especially with children that are much younger, how often should we be giving them something to drink? And with children who are much younger, should we be giving them, along with formula or the breastfeeding, should we be giving them water to keep them hydrated?
Children older than 4 months, we can do some water. And it depends the amount of time that we're outside and exposed to the heat, that we can do from 2 ounces up to 6 ounces if we need to. In older children, the minimum amount of water that we should all drink is not just children, but adults too. We should drink at least half our weight in ounces of water a day. I know that sounds like a lot.
Wow. Boy, if people could see my eyes.
And if we're outside and sweating, if we're practicing sports, if we're doing all these other things, then our requirement does go up. If we're drinking caffeinated drinks, our requirements do go up. So when we're outside playing, we need to hydrate our children before we go outside. Even if they say they're not thirsty, give them something to drink. Our body will become thirsty when we're already dehydrated 1 to 2%.
Wow.
Before we're dehydrated, we're not going to be thirsty at all. So if we only drink when we're thirsty, we're waiting to be mildly dehydrated to drink. And then once they're outside, about every 20 minutes, you can give them some to drink. In some cases, they'll say, just 5 ounces at a time would be enough for somebody 12 and under, or older kids or sports kids, 8 to 10 ounces.
Now, what is the best way to prevent dehydration as far as drinks are concerned? I mean, I'm a big water drinker, but I don't drink Gatorade or I don't drink water with enhanced with minerals and things like that. Is just plain water sufficient?
It is sufficient most of the time. I usually will counsel mostly the teens in my office that the sports drinks are for that sports, or if we're doing a physical activity that we're profusely sweating, because that will replace your electrolytes. When you get dehydrated, you can get dehydrated from loss of water, but also you can get dehydrated from loss of electrolytes. And that's when you get the muscle cramps, and the nausea and vomiting that you can get with dehydration or heat exhaustion. So those sports drinks can be taken if we're going to be having an activity outside that is prolonged and will be profusely sweating. So if we're in a football game and you have a second half to play, by all means drink. Or if we're playing outside and we've been out for a while, you can have something with electrolytes if we are sweating. Mostly, with the way our environment is right now, our weather is right now, it's hot and it's extremely humid.
But would you recommend like those Gatorade drinks or Powerade drinks just to be drinking them?
No. No, a lot of people don't know where Gatorade came from. And
are you about to tell me?
If you want to know.
I do want to know.
Oh, okay. That's why I like them.
I see a lot of kids just go to, the drink machines, and that's their drink of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that that's not healthy. And so I would like for you to dispel that myth for me.
Yeah, Gatorade actually comes from Florida Gators, from the football team. And they invented it at the university because they were concerned about the players. They were doing all right the first half, and the second half, they were having muscle cramps. They were having decreased performance. So what they decided to do was make a drink to give sugar for just quick, cheap energy and try to replenish what they have lost in sweat. And that's mainly what sports drinks are. So, I tell teenagers, you're drinking sweat. Because that's really what you're doing. And if you're drinking it without actually losing sodium, then you're taking too much sodium in your body. And, that has its own problems.
Okay. So you suggest only for sports. Don't drink them for lunch. Don't drink them just to be drinking them because you like the taste of sugar and salt.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Give us some signs of heat exhaustion.
With heat exhaustion, it usually can happen. It can happen in a day, but it might take a couple of days. And early signs are fatigue. Of course, you're going to be thirsty. Your tongue and your lips are going to be dry. You're going to have lack of energy, and you're going to feel like you're overheated and weak. And then later on, you can have other problems like headaches, and that's another thing I tell parents. Your child's playing outside and he complains of a headache. He's overheated and he's dehydrated. You gotta take him out of the sun, give him some shade, give him something cool to drink, and let him cool off for a while before he resumes play.
Okay. Severe heat exhaustion. Any other signs?
Well, when you start going more into just not loss of water, but also loss of electrolytes, then you will have nausea, you will have vomiting, you will have muscle cramps, dizziness, and the urine will become darker because your body's trying to keep water, and in some cases you might have loss of consciousness. You might pass out.
And at that point, we take them to the emergency room. What should we go from there?
Well, if there's loss of consciousness, yes, they need to be seen because it's a severe loss of fluids and electrolytes. If they're having the other symptoms and you're hydrating them, you're trying to cool them off, cool rags, and all that, and they're still sick, you do need to call your physician.
Okay. Maribel, we need to take a quick break here on 96.7 FM and AM 1490. You're listening to Healthy Habersham here on WCHM, Clarksville, Habersham, and we will be back in just a moment to talk more about what we can do with bug bites and how you treat them.